And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello again and welcome to Thursday's Alaska Flying Weather. Up first, the flying weather graphic for Friday morning showing IFR here from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and a narrow band here over the Chukchi Sea that extends southward as a narrow band right along the southwest coast here. Otherwise, areas of VFR out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians with some marginal VFR for Adak and Atka as well as Shimei and Attu. Otherwise, pretty good out west. Kodiak Island, not too bad either, mostly VFR there. We've got some IFR here over the eastern and southeastern Copper River Basin. Another batch here from the southern Kuskokwim Valley, southern Alaska Range area across the Aleutian Range and in the eastern Bristol Bay, and a little bit here over the northern Kuskokwim Valley. And for the afternoon, IFR here from the Tanana Valley right on down into along the Alaska Range and into the Kuskokwim Valley there that extends down toward King Salmon, or actually across King Salmon, and possibly as far south as Pilot Point, maybe Port Hayden. More IFR here for the Bering Strait and into the western North Slope. But you can see the Arctic coast becomes marginal VFR for the afternoon. Copper River Basin, mostly VFR. Matanuska, Susitna Valley, trending toward VFR for the Matanuska Valley. Call it marginal there. VFR for the Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, mostly marginal for the southeast coast. And then for Saturday morning, fair amount of VFR now for the Panhandle. A little bit IFR lingering there in the north coast. Otherwise, some scattered marginal VFR for the North Gulf Coast in toward the eastern Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet area. VFR Kodiak Island right up into the western interior. And some IFR here from about the Yukon River northward there to the Brooks Range. And varying conditions for the North Slope and the Arctic coast. And also varying conditions out here over the Bering Sea with a pretty good widespread area of VFR. Again, marginal VFR for Adak and Atka. And then for Saturday afternoon, marginal VFR here for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coastline in toward Togiak Bay and Dillingham, with marginal VFR from the Pribilofs down across the eastern Aleutians. And then some IFR here along and south of the Brooks Range, Yukon Flats across the Kobuk-Koyukuk Valley areas up to the western Arctic coast, and some IFR again along the Alaska Range down into the Talkeetna Mountains and the southern Kenai Peninsula, mostly VFR for the southeast coast. And from there, taking a look at passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR becoming VFR probably by midday through the afternoon. That same forecast also good for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, look for IFR for both passes there as well as Rainy. So pretty IFR flying conditions for the western Alaska Range all the way up to Windy and Isabel as well, with Mintasta becoming VFR. Tanita, marginal. Portage, marginal. And Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet again out to the west here, well to the south with a jet stream staying to the south as well. At the surface, still northward here, but south of St. Lawrence Island, just off the southwest coast across Kodiak Island, up along the North Gulf Coast, and then eastward into the northern Panhandle. 2,000 feet here, south central Alaska, mostly the Kenai Peninsula area actually, in across the North Gulf Coast, or in across the northern Panhandle. And for icing, look for isolated moderate here in a band extending from Cook Inlet, northern Kodiak Island, across the Gulf of Alaska, including the North Gulf Coast here, down across the Panhandle. Otherwise, could be some possibility of some icing up there for the eastern Arctic coast, northern Seward Peninsula into the Strait, and just a couple of scattered areas here around the central and western Aleutian areas. And taking a look at the jet stream here, again, well to the south, just barely onto the chart here. Actually, the northern edge of the jet max and 90 knots are just showing up on the chart. So lighter winds here over the Aleutians, very light and variable over interior Alaska and the northern Bering Sea. And southeast coast, not too bad. Stronger jet here off into Canada where it belongs. Southerlies 110 to 115 knots. And for 9,000 feet, we've got northerly winds here along the west coast, actually starting from about the Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula at 30 knots, picking up to 55 knots out of the north there for the Alaska Peninsula areas. Light here over the Gulf of Alaska, through the interior to the Arctic coast. Out to the west, have some westerly winds out here over the western Bering Sea, maybe up to 35 knots for the western Aleutians, otherwise a stronger 50-knot wind staying farther to the north. And for 3,000 feet, same pattern here. Westerlies in areas, kind of a band of 30-knot winds here with a trough edging in toward the Pribilof Islands. 35 to 55 knot winds there with a stronger trough farther to the west. North 30 knots there for the Chukchi Sea, pick up to 45 knots out of the northwest for the Alaska Peninsula. And some westerlies at about 30 knots there right along the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. Several lows here over the interior, actually the Kenai Peninsula back to the northwest there and over toward Eagle. Keep winds light and variable, and that pattern extends down across the southeast coast as well as the Gulf of Alaska. So turbulence-wise, look for considerable moderate turbulence here, mechanical turbulence for the southern southwest interior, Alaska Peninsula, and the Bering Strait and southern Seward Peninsula area. Maybe some isolated moderate turbulence there for the eastern Arctic coast.